It's an airdrop from space as well.
This is space, and this is an egg moments before I attempted the world's highest egg drop. The goal is to build a contraption that can protect a raw egg from breaking when dropped from the tallest height possible. So my building, but humans are always building taller buildings. So if I go all the way to the top and straight to outer space, this would be the most physically, financially, and mentally draining video I would ever attempt. And attach that rocket to a weather balloon and take it up to space. Once there, the rocket would eventually accelerate past Mach 1, breaking the speed of sound, and then it would autonomously adjust the four fins on the back to fall onto a mattress that we'd placed on the ground. And that all seemed pretty straightforward. So like any good engineers would, with calculating the terminal velocity of an egg, and speed at which they fall once the force of Earth pulling you towards it. For humans, that max speed is about 120 miles per hour, and after doing some simple math for an egg, it tops out at 75 miles per hour. And a tall enough building whose lawyers would agree to let us roll an egg off the side and onto a mattress, we had to improvise a bit.
83.
Yes! Check the egg. No cracks. It's a good start. Small farming town of Gridley, California, which is the place where we broke the elephant toothpaste world record, where the plan was to set out a target mattress for the egg to land on, a little bit of margin built in just in case.
Our computer, here's the fins.
This, by the way, is Joe. He didn't go to school for any kind of engineering degree. He's all self-taught and recently even landed a launched rocket SpaceX style as movable tail fins, whereas I was in charge of the payload. In other words, how we would keep the egg from freezing on the way up and release the egg. And the purpose of this first trip to Gridley was a flight characterization test. Do a low altitude test at 10,000 feet just to prove to ourselves we could steer the rocket.
Possibly go wrong, besides like 4,000 things.
And so with everything more or less in place and ready to go.
This is terrifying.
Okay.
No.
It's pretty much harmless.
An egg that will go faster than the speed of sound. Supersonic. Mach 1.
Congratulations.
So the next morning we got up at 4 a.m. when the woods decision to add a metallic streamer to the back of the rocket to make it easier to visually track. We had our first dumb failure.
All right. GP bloop, and it pooped it out.
And scrubbing the launch meant we unfortunately had to
wow, that's so cool.
And back at home base, we ran some tests that confirmed our hypothesis. The streamer was interfering with the GPS signal, and that messed up the rocket's math in calculating its speed, so it thought it was time to release the egg, swapping the metallic tracking streamer with one made from plastic.
Good news is there's hardly any wind today. Kind of frozen.
Nevertheless, we pushed forward.
Going away. Nice.
I see it.
Quickly realized the balloon was rising at a slower rate than we anticipated.
We're already south and we're only halfway up.
Decided to manually drop the rocket because we were already way too far off course for the rocket to make up the lateral distance.
It takes so long.
Clicked.
Problem of the day, as the fins actively forced the rocket into an uncontrolled death spiral.
Well, it landed. Status of the egg. Mark, I think I might have some bad news for you.
At which point we stumbled on an entire field of sitting birds.
It's pretty good.
The movable fins seemed to be actually forcing the rocket into that tailspin, which was surprising because Joe had definitely run through a lot of analysis in one final try. As of outcome, this would be the final attempt. If we couldn't land the egg on
2, 1.
I feel like this is going to fail too.
Now, in order for the balloon to hit the target mattress, for each launch, we'd started from different spots around Gridley, which hot air balloons steer themselves. Computers know the wind direction and speed at every height as you go up. We know all this information is the fascinating part, because every day it's someone's job to launch 2 balloons like this into the sky at noon and midnight. We'll have something called a radiosonde attached to them that measures things like altitude, pressure, temperature, and wind, which gets fed into supercomputers, and that's the reason weather and wind predictions can be so accurate. Eventually pop and just land somewhere. Folks make a hobby out of just trying to track him down.
Where is it?
Can't find him. Releasing.
I think we're down.
In the water.
Everyone okay?
In the right direction just slightly.
We found it. Good. Wait a minute.
It's
the egg! Oh, did it crack?
I phoned a friend with my buddy Adam Steltzner, who you might recognize as this guy from when we landed Curiosity on Mars. He immediately spotted a fatal flaw in our brilliant plan.
And you're doing terminal guidance to something about the size of a house. How do you not get busted by the FAA?
In other words, we were basically attempting to make a precision-guided missile. And to be fair, he raised a good point. The people who could help us actually can't, and even if we figured it out ourselves, are questionable at best. And so after a fruitful
Worry about is heating. You might want to start with a two-stage thing.
we decided to pivot, and instead of completely scrapped our old design and spent a couple months designing and building a new system that Earth. So we would still go to space on a weather balloon, would separate from the back half of the rocket about halfway down. After we'd already broken the sound barrier, the next step is the parachute deploy, followed by the heat shield separation, and we would follow in kind by launching our own parachute and cushioning airbags, as you can see here, which we borrowed from the Spirit and Opportunity Land. Complete redesigning and building, we found ourselves in the desert, feeling cautiously optimistic. And that was due to final tests in the world's largest wind tunnel. Late into the night on final preparations. This was an idea and a passion project 3 years in the making. At the end of the day, it was the laws of physics that would ultimately determine our fate. Carry more weight, and they're open on the bottom, which means they equalize to the pressure, and it's impossible for them to pop. Really lightweight and so thin and delicate, you have to be really careful and touch it with gloves. And then we made a gut-wrenching discovery.
What? No helium.
Sucking out
This
the
music.
helium from the balloon.
So sad.
It wasn't until that morning that we were able to test the integration of the two systems together.
So long and heavy, as soon as it wiggles, it's going to want to bend. Great intention compression. What's happening at Mach 2 is
That's not going to work out.
no other balloons in the world of this size that we can get access to. And to
Can't
save
figure
this
it out.
one so we could hopefully reach.
Financial concerns aside, I felt like I had just let everyone down. Not just my team and the rest of the crew helping. Drove 6 hours to come out and watch as well.
Even the
But that's the
ones
thing with
watching the video.
failures. And some vacuum and temperature tests on a raw egg. There's no air pressure and it's really, really cold in space. So we tested some heaters in our egg chamber and proved that they keep the egg warm enough. Has to work. And for that reason, a lot of critical systems have backups. Even the part of my own hardware and curiosity opened to the exact same place in case one of the doors ever stopped working. An egg surrounded in packing materials with a 20-foot streamer on the back, parachutes to deploy, no autonomous timing sequences, and no fancy mechanism. Finally, we went to a local crane yard to test both our solutions at their respective terminal velocities, starting first.
Oh, baby! Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah! By the way, the actual rover parachute held perfectly. Mwah!
Back to the desert
Space.
for what and creates a weak point for it to tear. So I was obsessively checking the fish scale reading that if we were successful, he'd be the one to make the official call. And so after
Here we go, girl.
it was finally time for liftoff.
One!
This time.
Just what we predicted, and that meant we for sure didn't have a leak, and things were finally breaking our way. It takes about 2 hours to get all the way up to space, 3,000
for 2
feet. We
hours.
decided to hop in the car so we could drive over to the
It's ascending at the right rate. We've passed some critical
are
threshold points.
pulled over
That's
for a
what
bit as we
publicity
reached
expect.
an important altitude milestone of 100,000 feet, 2.5 times higher than a typical commercial plane.
Dude, that's totally it.
What wasn't awesome,
Yeah, it like seems to be smaller.
But it's just weird
So-
that it would just.
It dropped within the last 2 minutes. Yeah. That's 30,000 feet over the last however, so it's just popped.
around and around relative to the balloon for about 10 minutes. This meant the cord that its
that's
balloon
nice
was
pop.
getting wrapped around tighter and tighter until it was so tight, essentially unzip and destroy itself. And so if our payload could autonomously jettison itself from the tangled rocket balloon mess at 20,000 feet, the orange parachute, and land the egg safely on its airbags. As we parked,
That is
we knew
what
what was
with
nothing left to do
X7.
but go on a hunt.
Like a rover parachute. Okay.
Autonomously ejected itself from the mangled weather balloon mess at 20,000 feet. I knew by this point not to get my hopes up.
I mean, so let's look through the window a little bit. Now we're safe on ours. It's TBD, right? Let's check it out to be sure.
Oh man.
There's a bunch of eggs. I think it was about.
Touchdown confirmed. We're safe on Earth.
Okay. I thought it was so
It was
long.
in space
Three
and
or
now
four
it's on
eggs.
Earth.
Down the
It's a
beach
balloon.
ball, which as far as I was concerned, was just extra.
Touchdown confirmed. Look at that. We're safe on Earth. We are safe on Earth. 2 for 2,
Okay.
baby.
Rarely unfold how we think they will, can accomplish a feat as incredible as the world's smartest Martian robot, or as ridiculous as the world's tallest egg drop.
It was actually a big video. It's kind of entertaining the whole way through. Finally, the egg survived from the space. So, video,